Nobody is comfortable telling you where they messed it up. They want to hide it. They want to delete it like it didn't happen. Most of my mentoring is telling you what it's going to be really like. The things that make you feel like you want to be able, willing to, inviting the risks, you don't respect that same measure of risk when you are really at that moment where you could still say, no, I'm not going to do it. Let me sit still and not do it. So your motivation leads you to the dance. That means you're in front of that chart. You're sitting there, you're watching it. You have your silver bullet in mind. You have your optimal trade entry in mind. You have, whatever else I've ever taught that you've gravitated to as your model. You have your draw on liquidity. You believe it's going to go here or it's going to go there, and you're ready to see it. If it could just give you a fair value gap, you're in there. But then something magical happens. Something magical comes in and changes everything. It's like your perception completely changes, and it becomes sometimes like a language you've never read before, and you're like a deer in headlights. You're paralyzed. You knew what you wanted to do, but now you're in front of the charts and you're watching live practice action and you can't do it. You're waiting for something to appear as a nudge, a little, you're right, now take it. And many of us, when we first start, we call that confirmation. The only thing that it confirms is you sat there too long. That's what it confirms. You sat there too long. Now it's already moved. It would be better for you to wait for some kind of a down close candle in a lower time frame, reach into a fair value gap if you're bullish, and then use that. Don't chase running higher price when you're bullish. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because the only thing you're doing is increasing the likelihood of your stop loss needing to be larger than it's necessary to be, or making it harder for you to hold the trade, because you're going to know as soon as you enter it, you're going to be demanding subconsciously that it moves right away in your favor, and you don't want to see any kind of drawdown. Whereas if you're bullish, and this is how I teach, so it overcomes a lot of the built-in fears that are associated with being poorly placed in a trade or chasing price. So if you're bullish, I'm teaching you to buy what? A down close candle, or a candle that's forming a likely down close candle, but it need not close down. It can be trading lower and still have a higher close. But at the time of your entry, if you're bullish, you're waiting for price to go lower into an inefficiency or run below a short-term low to take those stops. So you're going to buy sell stops, or buy inefficiency on a buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency. You're going to buy that rebalancing to close up and overlap that up close candle that you're seeing as an inefficiency. So you're buying against the grain of price delivery versus impulsively chasing it. In the beginning, because you think as a trader, just like I did, I want to be in a market that has the market going up. Like I want to be in a move that's going up. It's too scary. I'm speaking hypothetically and in retrospect to how it was when I first started. So as a 20-year-old, I was afraid to buy things when it was moving lower. To me, it made no sense. I mean, it literally made no sense whatsoever to go in and try to pick a bottom. That's what I was looking at it as, because I heard my mentor say, you got to avoid trying to pick bottoms. They're like catching falling knives. You have to wait for that dagger to fall, hit the ground, stop quivering, then gingerly go over and pick it up. That's verbatim. That's literally right out of that Ford cassette tape VHS course that he had from 1995. It was ingrained in me, just like the things that I say to you as your mentor. I'm not in the room with you, but you'll see something in the charts and you'll hear my voice saying the very thing that you had a resonation with in a video or a lecture, maybe something in this one today. And you'll hear my voice, you'll know exactly what I said verbatim, because it left an indelible mark on you. It made an impact on you psychologically, so you think differently as a result of it. In the beginning, when you have no real clue what you're doing, no model, you can become very impulsive. But as a new student with a model, with all the right motivation, you still can be impulsive. What does that mean? What does that mean? What's the contrast between what I've already said so far versus someone that now has a model, has all the right mindset, has listened to all the proper mindset from the inner circle trader and how to do this and how to do that. And now we're at the dance now. We're staring at the chart. It's during that 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock hour. We know that there's going to be a silver bullet. We know that it's likely going to draw to a liquidity pool that's pretty obvious where it's likely to go. But here you are, sitting there looking at price. When you have a model and you have all the proper motivation that led you up to the point where now you've made the decision, you went to sleep the previous day, you woke up with every expectation that you're going to go into this following the plan, following the model, following the rules. You're looking for this setup to form. And now you're here. You're in front of the charts. You're there. And you do what? You act impulsively. You see something that is not your model. Perfect example. I'll give you something. You've done the work. You've done the analysis. You've listened to me talk about what I think the market's going to likely draw to on a higher time frame. You committed to the idea that that's probably what you're going to subscribe to. So you're only going to focus in that direction. And that's the proper mindset. Not that you should be handheld, but that's why I do it. So that way you can keep your premise, your bias, the narrative focused on that time frame draw. You won't be 100%. But now, because you're in front of the charts, subconsciously, you're demanding that you're 100%. Is that practical? Is that realistic? Is that something that anyone could reasonably expect to have, especially if they're new? No, of course not. But that motivation that carried you to that moment, where now you're in front of the charts, you're ready to do your model, you're ready to pull the trigger. All you have to do is wait for that fair value gap to form, because it's going to be moving up quickly, and it's going to create that little buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency, and it's going to form it in a place where it allows you to capture 12 to 15 handles. So that means your minimum criteria for the trade would be met. It's really there, but unfortunately, it's not there yet. And what happens is you start seeing price run. And in your mind, you're thinking, this is going to be one of those times where it's not going to create a fair value gap. And here I am. I did all the work. I got all this stuff drawn on my chart. I have all the lipstick. I have all the motivation. I'm here now. And I know what's going to happen, because Murphy's Law says that whatever can go wrong is going to go wrong, and it's going to run without me. And I'm not going to be able to accept that, because I've done all this preliminary analysis. I've done all this preliminary workup, listening to this guy, Jawbone. I'm all pumped up. I'm ready to go. And here it's running. It just took off 8 handles straight, one shot. It's running. Your mind's going to be tricked by that, because you haven't watched price enough. That motivation to do the right things gets replaced with impulsiveness, because of the lack of experience, the lack of the doing of it, being there, not just simply watching price. That's the first stage. Is tape reading just the first stage. Then you got to do it with a demo and submit to the idea that the rules still have to be applied. But then with live fund trading, or the equivalent thereof, where you can lose something, your funded account, challenge account, your funded account, or your live account, you want to capture money. And the lack of experience that you have, and everybody has that lack in the beginning, and all of you, and I was not exempt from this. I wanted to get through that stage quickly. I wanted to leave it behind me in my rearview mirror. I want to be able to say, yeah, see you later. I ain't never going back to that town again, which is ignorance, neophyteville, beginner. Like, you want to be able to leave the ranks of a newbie. When I'm encouraging you to live there for a little while, because that's going to teach you who you are. And it's going to show you the character flaws that you have, that you're pretending you don't have, that you've been hiding from yourself your entire life. However long you've been on a spinning rock, all of you have character flaws. I don't hide mine. I don't hide it. I tell you where they are. I tell you where my weaknesses are. Because when I was a younger man, I tried to pretend they didn't exist, and they were impediments to me. They held me back. They were the barriers that I hugged. I held on to them. I held on to it like something wrapped in barbed wire. It's not comfortable, but you get used to that uncomfortable state and it becomes normal for you. Like that's why abusive relationships go on. Spouses that, beat their wives because they're weak men. That women train themselves because they have children. They don't want to break that family up. They know what that man's doing to her is not right. But they allow it to go on because it becomes normal for them. And change is a little bit more scary because it begins to bring in more uncertainty. And as humans, we don't like uncertainty. But in this industry, you chose to be in one that is always uncertain. There's nothing 100%. All the things that I have, all the things that I share, my track record, when I pull it out and I point to something before it happens, look around. You've been walking with me now for almost 2 years now publicly. How many things did I call and not happen? Very, very, very small number of that. But how many things were right and correct and where the market went to? You can't reasonably expect to be like that in the beginning. And when you learn from someone, when I was a martial artist, I wanted to be as good as the guy that was teaching me and then better. That's what I wanted. Anything that they did that was impressive, I needed to do it better than them. Why? Because I had this deep ingrained necessity for me to be significant, because while I was growing up in Cardboard City, I was part of what we considered white trash. We lived in low income, and I got in fistfights and stomped the shit out of people that thought they were better than me. I curb stomped people. You know what that is? Where you stomp their ass, you beat them, you drag them over to a curb, you open their mouth up with their teeth on the edge of the curb, and you stomp the back of their head. I've done that before. And the sound that makes, you'll never forget it. Those are things that I've done as a kid with people older than me because they talked down to me. They acted like they were better than me. So what drives me, and still today, is that deep scar. I was the guy on the other side of the tracks growing up. I didn't come into this world with a silver spoon in my ass. I didn't have that. Everything was a hard thing to do. And it took a lot longer than I wanted it to do. And it was very difficult. I had a lot of opposition around me. People would try to tell me, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to just, amount to the same thing we do. And I went to school and they tried to talk me out of that. And they said, you're not going to get good grades. And I got great grades. Constantly, the enemy constantly will work on you to try to discourage you. And if you're strong enough that you have the motivation that keeps you going, when you're finally there, he's really going to try, because you've done it. You finally climbed to that moment where now you're going to see the proof. You're going to finally get that testimony that you can hold on to and say, nobody can take this from me. And some of you are going to discover that motivation that got you there, which is, everybody needs it. I'm not trying to discourage that. That's not a good thing. It is a good thing. But there's an event, there's a phenomenon that takes place where once you're there, you can't handle the pressure and you throw out all the rules. You don't wait for the setup. You think that it's going to be stripped from you. You worked so hard to get to this moment. Now here's your first shot, the first shot to use the information that you've been studying. Now you can make gainful profits if it's correctly done, but you don't have the experience yet to lean on. And you see a sudden quick movement, which really isn't that much. Nothing's changed in the trade setup. But in your mind, because you're so keyed up, that motivation, you're hopped up. You're ready to go. You're that guy that all your friends are around. Fight, fight, fight. If they weren't there, you'd probably shake hands with the guy and say, you know what? I apologize, man. This got out of hand. just forgive me for saying whatever I said or did whatever I did to you. You can't do that now because they've incited that rage. You've become lustful for blood. You need to do this now. And something happens where that motivation becomes impulse. And you don't use your model and you press the button. And as soon as that button is pressed, you're regretting it. Because now you just entered the uncertainty with no plan, no entry, no PDRA. You chased the price. And everything you've heard me say comes rushing into your brain and you're thinking, oh man, this is that thing he talked about. Now that trade seems like it's going to choke the life out of you. Maybe you start hyperventilating. You don't realize it yet. So you start feeling your fingers and your hands and your arms start tingling. All of a sudden you start feeling your heart palpitate. Feels like you can't breathe. Doesn't feel like there's any air in the room. Why is it so hard to breathe? That's anxiety. Now you're faint. You're feeling the effects of the adrenaline in your body, and you're standing still. It's like a Ferrari in neutral, running with the accelerating pedal to the floor. It's not good for the engine. And now you're worrying about what you're feeling bodily. And then cortisol is going to release. And that hormone makes you feel like you're going to die. Now, how can you be watching price, managing it, and what you should be doing, focusing on your model, if you think you're having a stroke or a heart attack or about to pass out or throw up? I've been there. I've been there, and I've been there while driving a truck over the Key Bridge in high winds, panicking because I'm watching my co-track tell me that there's absolutely nothing I can do and I'm nowhere near a payphone to get out. You can't understand that. You don't understand that because you're so spoiled with the information and technology we have today where we can just press a button, get in, get out. Seconds. Be on the other side of a bridge and then someone goes and has a typical thing that anybody else would have normally while they're doing construction on the bridge. You only have one lane, and then their engine dies and you're on a trade. You can't get out and you can't move, and you lose your account that day because you thought you were smart enough not to use a stop loss. And Copper said, not today. That's the stuff that I lived through. That I did that stuff. So there's a lot of people out there that'll tell you, this is where I made this much money. This is where I made this much money. This is where I made that much money. I did this. I did that. I did this. Nobody is comfortable telling you where they messed it up. They want to hide it. They want to delete it like it didn't happen. Most of my mentoring is telling you what it's going to be really like. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't pretend that I didn't come from humble beginnings where it was very hard, next to impossible, and I quit dozens of times. That's what I call it.